Have you ever seen a scary character at a nightclub, and what was your experience like? I never thought a night out could haunt me like this. It started as a typical weekend. My friends and I wanted to celebrate a promotion at a new club downtown. I wasn't much of a club person, but I figured the change of scenery would be fun. The place was dimly lit, with colored strobe lights slicing through thick smoke, creating shadows that moved unnaturally across the dance floor. Music pounded, vibrating through my chest, and at first, everything seemed normal. As we danced, I noticed someone standing apart from the crowd. At first, I assumed it was just a stranger, maybe a shy person observing the chaos. But something about them felt wrong. Their movements were off. Not awkward, not drunken, just completely unnatural. And their eyes, I can't describe them without sounding insane. They were entirely black. No eyes, no irises, just empty voids that seemed to pull my gaze in, almost paralyzing me with fear. I tried shaking it off, telling myself I was overthinking. Maybe I had too much to drink. But every time I moved across the floor, I caught glimpses of that figure in the corners of my vision. Sometimes it was in front of me, sometimes behind. Every time I looked directly, it vanished, like some cruel trick of the lights and smoke. My friends didn't notice. They were laughing, oblivious, but my stomach churned with unease. Eventually, I tried to leave the dance floor, moving toward the bar, hoping distance would help. When I reached the bar, I froze. The figure was there again. Closer than before. But it wasn't just standing here, it was watching. I felt every nerve in my body tighten. Its face was featureless. Smooth skin with no eyes, no nose, no mouth, yet I could feel it staring, and not in a human way. I wanted to scream, but the music was too loud, and my friends didn't understand. I backed away slowly, weaving through the crowd, but every time I turned, it seemed to have crossed the room in seconds. Panic overtook me, and I ran toward the exit, shoving past people, barely breathing. Outside, the cool night air hit me like a wall, and for a moment, I felt relief. But when I looked back at the club's windows, I swore I saw a dark silhouette standing behind the glass, watching me leave. Since that night, I've never returned to crowded clubs. I avoid parties, large gatherings, and anything with flashing lights and loud music. The memory of those black, void-like eyes and the featureless face follows me, creeping into my thoughts when I'm alone at home or walking down dimly lit streets. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a person in costume, maybe alcohol and paranoia, but no explanation feels right. That night was real as the fear that still grips me whenever I think about it. Even months later, I find myself scanning the crowd in supermarkets, in bars, anywhere people gather. I can't shake the feeling that something might be standing just at the edge of my vision, waiting for me to look away. And deep down, I know that night wasn't just a strange encounter, it was a warning. Something beyond understanding exists, and it knows how to watch without being seen. I've shared this with only a handful of people because I don't want to be labeled insane. But if you ever feel that someone or something is watching you, even when no one should be, trust that feeling. That's all I can say. Because I will never forget the cold, empty void of those eyes, and the way it moved with purpose, with awareness, in a place where nothing should have been alive in that way. It was real, it was terrifying, and I live with a memory every single day. I used to think that driving late at night was just boring, maybe a little lonely, but never dangerous until the night I saw something I can't explain. I was returning home from a friend's house about 2 hours away, on a mostly empty stretch of highway. The moon was thin, clouds drifting lazily, and my headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating nothing but asphalt and the occasional reflective road sign. I was tired but not sleepy, music playing softly to keep me company. About an hour into the drive, I noticed movement on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was an animal, a deer, maybe, but as I got closer, it stepped into my headlights and froze. It was a figure, tall and thin, wearing clothes that looked like they belonged to a different era. Its face was pale, almost translucent, with eyes too large and black for a human. I slammed on the brakes instinctively, my heart hammering, and the figure didn't move. Just stared. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it must be a trick of the shadows or maybe someone in costume, but there was something wrong. Its proportions weren't right. The arms were too long, the fingers unnaturally thin, and it had a stillness about it that was wrong. Not human. And then it stepped back, into the darkness, but I swear I could feel his gaze following me as I slowly drove past. A few minutes later, I noticed headlights behind me. Another car, far too close. I assumed someone was tailgating me, but when I glanced in the rearview mirror, the car didn't have a driver. The silhouette of the vehicle was visible, lights on, moving in sync with my own car, but no one was inside. My hands trembled on the wheel. I considered stopping, but fear rooted me in place. I took the next exit, hoping to lose it, but every road I turned onto, the same headlights appeared, following, silent. I tried speeding up, tried turning onto smaller streets, anything to break the connection. The car mirrored my moves perfectly, always keeping pace, always silent. I finally remembered a diner a few miles back that was supposed to be open 24/7. I turned in and parked as close to the door as I could. When I stepped out, the car was gone. No lights, no sound, nothing. Just the empty parking lot and the neon sign flickering above me. I told myself I must have imagined it, that exhaustion and the monotony of the highway played tricks on my mind. But then, as I walked to the door, I noticed footprints in the gravel. Not tire tracks, human footprints, but elongated, much larger than any adult's feet, and they ended at the edge of the diner's parking lot, disappearing into the darkness. I never returned to the highway at night. Even in broad daylight, that stretch of road gives me chills. I've tried to explain it logically, tried to convince myself I hallucinated, but I know what I saw. There's something out there on quiet roads, waiting for late-night travelers, following without warning, watching without speaking. Sometimes, I dream of it. The tall, pale figure standing by the side of the road, black eyes glowing faintly under my headlights, and the empty car that follows, perfectly silent, perfectly patient. Every time I wake up from those dreams, I check my driveway, my street, my surroundings. I can't stop looking over my shoulder, because I know it's out there somewhere, waiting for the next person who thinks a quiet night drive is safe. Even writing this now, my hands shake a little. I haven't told most people, because they call me crazy. But I know the truth. I know the terror I felt was real, and I know I was lucky to make it home that night. Whatever that thing was, it could have followed me further. And I don't want to find out what happens when it finally decides I can't escape. It started as an ordinary night. I had stayed late at work, finishing a project that was due the next day. It was raining heavily when I left the office, the kind of rain that blurs streetlights and muffles sound. My car wipers were going full speed, but visibility was still poor. I usually take the highway, but that night I decided to take a back road, hoping it would be faster. About 15 minutes into the drive, I noticed a man standing at the edge of the road. He was soaked, coat clinging to him, hair plastered to his head. Normally, I would have slowed down or ignored him, but something about the way he was standing made me uneasy. He didn't wave or make any sign that he needed help. He was just there. I drove past, heart racing, but when I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw him running. Not jogging, not stumbling, running at a speed that seemed unnatural, keeping pace with my car as if he were gliding over the wet pavement. I slammed on the brakes, skidding slightly, but he disappeared. I convinced myself it was my imagination, that the rain in my tired eyes had played a trick on me. Minutes later, I passed a gas station. I pulled in, desperate to calm down. The lights inside flickered, and the clerk gave me a strange look as I muttered something about the weather. I parked, thinking I could wait for the rain to let up. But then I noticed him again standing just outside the gas station, looking directly at me. No expression, just eyes locked onto mine. Panic set in. I tried to start the car, but the engine wouldn't turn over. I turned the key again and again. Finally, it sputtered to life. I didn't wait, I floored it, leaving the station in a spray of water. As I drove, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, and there he was, somehow in the road behind me, moving impossibly fast, always just visible through the rain and darkness. I turned onto another road, hoping to lose him, but every turn I made, he appeared again. Then, out of nowhere, I saw another figure. A second man, identical to the first, standing in the middle of the road. I swerved, narrowly avoiding him, and when I looked back, both were gone. It didn't make sense. How could they appear, disappear, and reappear with such precision? I reached home soaked and shaking. I locked every door, drew the blinds, and sat in my living room for hours, trying to convince myself it was over. But the fear didn't leave. In the following days, I noticed small things. Doors slightly ajar, items moved that I knew I hadn't touched, shadows in my peripheral vision that vanished when I looked directly. I called a few friends, jokingly telling them about my experience on the back road. They laughed it off, suggesting stress or paranoia, but I knew better. Weeks later, I checked the local news and found out that 2 men had been reported missing on that same stretch of road around the time I drove through. Their descriptions matched exactly the men I saw. I don't drive that road anymore, not even in daylight. Sometimes, I wonder if they're still out there, waiting for someone else who thinks a late-night drive is safe. I can't explain what I saw or how they moved. All I know is that night changed me. I sleep with the lights on, I check every corner of my house before going to bed, and I never take a road that seems too quiet at night. Even now, years later, I occasionally see them in dreams. They stand silently in the rain, black eyes staring, expressionless faces watching, waiting. I wake up gasping, checking the windows and doors, and the unease never fully goes away. I don't think I'll ever forget that night, or those men. I just hope I never see them again in real life. It was around 2 a.m. when I decided to take a shortcut home through an industrial area I usually avoided. Most of the warehouses were abandoned, and the streetlights barely worked. My phone battery was low, and I didn't want to risk getting lost, so I thought it would be faster. Big mistake. As I drove slowly, I noticed a figure standing near one of the abandoned buildings. At first, I thought it was just a homeless person seeking shelter. But then I saw that they weren't moving like a normal person. They were perfectly still, as if rooted to the spot, their head tilted slightly, staring at me. My stomach tightened, and I instinctively slowed down, trying to give them space. Suddenly, the figure started moving, not walking, not running, but sliding across the ground. The movement was unnatural, like something out of a horror movie. I hit the accelerator, hoping to get past quickly. The figure followed. My headlights barely illuminated it, but I could see long, thin arms dragging across the pavement, its head swiveling unnaturally to keep eye contact with me. I turned a corner, heart racing, hoping to lose it. But then I saw more figures appearing from the shadows. At least 3 or 4 of them, all moving in the same way. They didn't run or chase like humans, they glided, and somehow, they matched my speed. My hands were shaking as I tried to focus on the road. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, but I knew if I slowed down, I might never leave that street. Finally, I reached the main road. The figures stopped at the edge of the industrial zone, vanishing as if they had never been there. I drove straight home without stopping, locked the doors, and sat in silence, trying to calm my pounding heart. I kept telling myself it was a hallucination caused by fatigue and the rain. The next day, I checked online to see if anyone else had reported strange sightings in that area. To my horror, I found multiple local forum posts describing the same kind of creatures. Figures that glided unnaturally, appeared in the industrial zone, and disappeared without a trace. Some claimed the figures only appeared late at night, near abandoned buildings. None of the reports mentioned any attacks, they simply watched, silently, waiting for someone to drive by. Over the next few weeks, I avoided that area entirely. But occasionally, when I drive late at night on empty streets, I feel the same sense of being watched. Shadows in the corner of my eyes, brief flashes of movement just outside the reach of my headlights. I don't know what I saw that night, but it wasn't human. Even now, I have nightmares about it. In the dreams, I'm back in that industrial area, and the figures are all around me, gliding silently. Their faces are featureless, black and smooth, with hollow eyes that seem to stare into my very soul. I wake up drenched in sweat, sometimes convinced I hear faint scraping noises outside my window. I've told a few friends about the incident, but they laugh it off, calling it stress or imagination. I try to convince myself that it's just my mind playing tricks, but deep down, I know what I saw was real. Something follows those streets at night, something not meant to be encountered. I've learned to trust my instinct since that night, and I'll never drive alone on empty, dark roads again. It's strange how a single encounter can change the way you see the world. I used to feel safe driving at night, confident that no one could get close without me noticing. That illusion shattered that night. Now, every shadow, every reflection in my rearview mirror, carries the possibility that something unseen is watching. I can't explain why they never attacked or why they only appeared in that industrial zone. I only know that they exist, and the memory of gliding, featureless forms following my car in the rain is something I'll carry for the rest of my life. Every time I drive past that area, even in broad daylight, my stomach tightens. I don't know if it's fear or a memory triggered, but I will never forget that night. I will never forget the way they moved, silently and unnaturally, watching me as if I was prey. Since then, I've made it a rule. Never take shortcuts through abandoned areas at night, and never ignore the feeling in your gut when something doesn't feel right. Some things are better left alone, and some encounters are not meant to be explained. I don't know what those figures were, but I know I was lucky to get out alive. It was a Saturday night, and my friends and I decided to go to a small local club that had just opened in our town. It wasn't fancy, just dim lights, a dance floor, and a few tables scattered around, but it was the kind of place where you could disappear into the crowd. We were all a little buzzed from drinks, laughing, joking, and enjoying the music. Around midnight, I went to get a drink at the bar. That's when I noticed someone standing at the edge of the dance floor, partially hidden in shadow. At first, I didn't think much of it. People like to hang near the corners. But something about them was off. Their posture was rigid, almost unnaturally still, and their head barely moved as they watched everyone around them. I felt a shiver go down my spine. I shrugged it off and got my drink, thinking it was just the alcohol making me paranoid. When I returned to my friends, I noticed that the person had moved closer, but still stayed in the shadows. There was something about their presence that made the air feel colder, heavier. My friends didn't seem to notice, so I tried to laugh it off and danced a little to distract myself. As the night went on, I kept catching glimpses of them out of the corner of my eye. They weren't interacting with anyone, just standing there, silently watching. At one point, I looked directly at them. Their face was pale, almost unnaturally so, and their eyes didn't blink. I blinked several times, sure I was imagining it, but the moment I looked back, they were still staring, unblinking, unflinching. I tried to tell myself it was some weird club makeup or a lighting trick, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. I could feel my chest tighten, a mix of fear and disbelief. I excused myself to the restroom, hoping some fresh air outside would calm me down. When I stepped outside, the street was empty, quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe, and that's when I heard a soft, deliberate tapping behind me. I turned slowly, expecting maybe a branch or a drunk passerby, but there was no one there. The tapping came again, closer this time, echoing slightly off the brick walls. My heart raced. I spun around, but the street was empty. I didn't want to go back inside, but my friends were still in there, waiting. I took a deep breath and re-entered the club. The music was louder now, the crowd denser, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was following me. And then I saw them again, moving closer through the crowd, still silent, still staring directly at me. Panic set in. I grabbed my friends and told them we were leaving. As we made our way to the exit, I noticed the figure linger near the bar, watching everyone leave but not moving with the crowd. I didn't look back until we were in the car, doors locked, engine running. By then, they were gone, or maybe I just couldn't see them anymore. The rest of the night was spent in silence, each of us trying to convince ourselves it was just my imagination. But the next morning, I woke up to find strange scratches on my car door, thin, shallow, like fingernails, but no one had been outside. I live alone, and my apartment building has security cameras. I checked the footage. Nothing. The scratches weren't captured on camera at all. Weeks passed, and I tried to put the experience behind me. But every time I pass the club, I get the same uneasy feeling. And sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I see that face, the pale, unblinking eyes, watching silently from the shadows. I don't know what it was. I don't know if anyone else ever noticed it or if it was only me. But I know one thing. There was something in the club that night that wasn't human, and it followed me for longer than I ever expected. I've stopped going to that area at night, stopped going to clubs alone, and I always check over my shoulder now, even in familiar places. Something that can watch you without blinking, without moving, without being noticed, is not something you forget easily. And I'll never forget that night, or the feeling of being seen by something that shouldn't exist. I was driving home from a friend's party late one night. It had been raining all evening, the streets slick and reflective under the dim street lights. I was alone in my car, tired but still buzzing from the night, listening to the faint hum of the radio. The highway was mostly empty, save for the occasional vehicle passing in the opposite direction. About 30 minutes into the drive, I noticed a figure standing at the side of the road, partially obscured by the darkness and the rain. At first, I assumed it was someone hitchhiking or a stranded driver. But as I got closer, something felt wrong. The person didn't move, didn't make any gesture. They just stood there, perfectly still, facing the road. I slowed down, instinctively cautious. I squinted through the windshield, trying to make out any details. The figure was tall, but the shape of their head seemed off, slightly elongated, almost unnatural. A chill ran down my spine, but I told myself it was probably just a hooded jacket, or an optical illusion caused by the rain and shadows. As I drove past, I caught a glimpse of their face, or at least what I thought was a face. It was pale, almost glowing faintly in the streetlight, with hollow eyes that seemed to follow me. I jerked the wheel slightly and sped up, my heart pounding. The rational part of my brain kept telling me it was impossible, that it was just a trick of the light, but my gut screamed otherwise. I tried to shake it off and focused on the road. But then I noticed it. The figure was on the side of the road again, only now they were a mile ahead, standing exactly the same way, as if they had moved faster than humanly possible. My hands gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles white. Panic setting, but I was too far from any gas station or town to stop safely. I accelerated, praying the highway would stretch endlessly so I could outrun whatever this was. Every curve, every turn, I kept catching glimpses of them, always on the side of the road, always staring. And no matter how fast I went, they seemed to stay perfectly in my line of sight. Finally, I reached an overpass with lights and a small exit ramp. I took it, hoping to lose them in the maze of streets below. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, there they were. Not running, not walking, just floating. The air around them seemed warped, like the space itself bent around their form. I slammed on the accelerator, took every turn blindly, trying to escape. I eventually made it to a gas station, heart racing, hands shaking. I parked under the bright lights, staring into the empty road behind me. No one. Just the rain and the occasional drip from the overhanging signs. I told the cashier what happened, expecting skepticism, but she looked at me like she had seen it before. She muttered, almost to herself, "You saw the highway watcher, didn't you?" I asked her what she meant, and she said there have been stories for years, people driving late at night, seeing a figure that shouldn't exist, and following them. Some make it home, some vanish. No one knows why or how. She warned me to avoid that highway at night if possible. I drove home slowly, lights on, checking every shadow. That night, I didn't sleep. Every sound outside my apartment made me jump, every shadow on the walls felt alive. And even now, months later, I still dream about that figure. Pale, hollow eyes, standing in the rain, waiting. I still don't know what I saw. I don't know if anyone else saw it, and I sure as hell don't want to. But one thing is certain. The highway watcher is real, and if you drive alone at night, it might be watching you too. A few months ago, I was house sitting for a friend while they went on vacation. Their house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood, mostly empty streets and the occasional dog barking at night. I thought it would be a simple, uneventful week, just me, a laptop, and some flicks. The first 2 nights were normal, nothing unusual. But on the third night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Soft, deliberate, coming from the kitchen. My heart skipped a beat. I live alone, so my first thought was maybe I had imagined it. But the footsteps continued, slow, heavy, approaching the living room. I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet, trying to stay calm. The footsteps stopped suddenly, right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, listening. Then came a faint whisper, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. It sounded like someone saying my name. I turned on the lights, swinging the bat toward the door. Nothing. The house was empty, dark shadows stretching across the walls. I tried to tell myself it was just a branch hitting a window or some normal noise, but the sense of being watched wouldn't go away. I stayed awake the rest of the night, every sound making me flinch. By morning, I convinced myself it had been my imagination. But that evening, things got worse. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, when I felt a cold breeze brush past me. Windows were closed. The room felt wrong, heavy, like someone was standing just behind me. Then I saw it. In the reflection of the microwave, there was a figure behind me. Tall, hunched slightly, face obscured by shadows. I spun around. Empty kitchen. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst. I checked every room, every closet. Nothing. I called my friend, explaining what happened. They laughed nervously and told me something I wish I hadn't heard. They said a previous house sitter had quit midweek, claiming the house was alive. Another neighbor once said they saw shadows moving through the windows at night, even when no one was home. That night, I set up my phone to record. I barely slept. Around 3 a.m., my phone started making static noises. When I checked the footage in the morning, I froze. In the hallway, just outside my bedroom, a shadowy figure slowly walked past the camera, stopping for a second, almost like it was staring at me through the lens. Then it vanished. I left that house immediately. I didn't want to come back, and I told my friend I wasn't comfortable staying there. Even now, weeks later, I can't stop thinking about those whispers, the cold air, and the shadow in the reflection. What terrifies me most is that the figure didn't seem hostile, just present. Waiting. Watching. And somehow, I feel like it's still there, in the corners of the house, for the next person who dares to stay.